Hello and welcome back to the Roker Rapport Xtra podcast. We got beat again at the weekend. We managed to somehow get beaten in a different way, a more embarrassing way, with Jason Seal's idiotic goalkeeping. But we'll try not to touch on that too much because we have got, I think it's 8 or 9 games left to try and pretend we might actually stay in this division. It's not looking likely, let's be honest. But nonetheless, leading up to Saturday's game, we do have Preston. And we've got Jonathan Breeze, who actually commentates on the Preston games. But more importantly, I believe you're a friend of Crabbers, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, know Crabbers very well.
Recommended by Crabbers himself, which is a pretty good endorsement. How do you know Crabbers? Let's be honest. Come on, spill the beans.
We worked together for quite a few years ago on a radio station in Liverpool. So, we know each other well.
He's held in high regard in Sunderland after his little rant that he did after we beat Newcastle back in 2000. Has he ever mentioned that to you? Has he ever told you the story of that?
Yeah, once or twice, yeah.
It's a pretty good story, isn't it? He is well liked up in our area, but I'm sure you will be as well, Jonathan. I'm sure you will be as well. How are you doing this evening? Are you all right?
Yeah, all good, thanks, yeah.
Good. So we'll fire sort of straight into sort of Preston's season. Obviously, we've been not aligned in terms of our form, but we've definitely been, shall we say, we've paid attention to each other's seasons, I think, due to how it started with Grayson, McGeady and all that as well. But Preston are doing pretty well, aren't they? 9th off top. How's things been this season?
Yeah, Preston have been doing well this season, actually. When Simon Grayson left in the summer, there was a little bit of uncertainty as to who'd be taking over. But I think there was a feeling at the club that with him leaving, it was an opportunity for Preston to take a step forward and to try something a little bit different. That's why I think the club went with Alex Neil and brought him in. And really, from the very first day he walked through the door, there's been an air of expectancy around the place. The fans have been bright and have been keen to see what Alex Neil's brought to the club. He's talked a lot about bringing in sort of young, hungry players who want to sort of prove themselves and be able to sort of grow and develop. And that's what he's done. So it's quite a young-looking Preston side this season. The playoffs are the ambition and the aim. And I think we've got a good chance of doing that. Need a good run-in, but we're playing some teams in and around us in that sort of top 6, top 8. So the opportunity's there to try and sneak the playoffs. And who knows once we get into that playoff lottery.
And I think when it comes to sort of Preston as a team, Grayson always seemed to be doing sort of all right. You always seem to be kind of bobbing around that possible playoff push, kind of, bad run puts you into relegation. But I've got a friend who's a big Preston fan, and she absolutely hated Simon Grayson for his negativity. Alex Neil seems to have brought a lot more positive football to the club from an outside perspective. Was that am I summing that up correctly?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, Alex Neil's coined this phrase, busting games open. So if it's a draw, whether it be 0-0 or 1-1 or whatever, and there's 20 minutes to go, he's quite happy to go all out and get that win. And if it means a defeat at the end of it, then sort of so be it. So you might see it at the weekend that if it is a draw going into the sort of final half an hour, he'll make a couple of changes and they'll probably be attacking changes to try and change the game, create more chances and find that winning goal. He's not afraid of doing that. Most of the time it's worked out okay. There's been the odd occasion where we've been caught out, but yeah, that's been his mentality really, and he's been a breath of fresh air really since coming in. That's not to say anything negative about Simon Grayson, because he's still held in very high esteem and very highly thought of, having got Preston out of League One and established herself really as a championship club again. So yeah, credit to him for that. And I think there was a bit of disappointment actually when he left to go to Sunderland, even though perhaps not with all fans, but he's certainly done his part.
And when Grayson left, I mean, I'm trying my best not to be, I suppose, arrogant in any way here, because we're sitting bottom of the championship. But I'm trying to remember when Grayson sort of came on board towards Sunderland, there was a feeling that a manager like Simon Grayson from outside of Preston couldn't turn down like the job that he was given. But I suppose, in some senses, and it's gone on to prove, we were a sinking ship with no money, with not no hope, but certainly it wasn't looking very good at that point, and it's certainly not looked very good since. So It was a huge risk from Simon Grayson. Were you surprised that he took the job, or were you very much did you understand why he took the job?
No, I think you've got to understand it, don't you, really? I mean, if you look at the size of the two clubs, and again, no disrespect to Preston, Sunderland's much bigger, isn't it? The fan base in the Premier League, week in, week out, has been phenomenal. I know it's not quite the same this season, being down at the sort of lower reaches of the Championship, but it's a passionate club with passionate fans, and the potential there is there, isn't it? That's probably why I guess Chris Coleman decided to leave the Wales job, where he was pretty much a saint, wasn't he, and could do no wrong in Wales. But he's taken on this big tough challenge up with you guys. So yeah, I think you understand why Simon Grayson decided to do that. And yes, I guess it's a bit, well, from my point of view, a bit of a shame for him that it didn't work out for him, because he's a nice fella and a good manager.
Did you expect it to go as badly as it did? Because within Sunderland, I think some of us did, not all of us, but I think we could tell quite early on he was almost out of his depth, and I feel quite horrible saying that, because it's not like we've improved that much under Coleman, but there was certainly a feeling of he was out of his depth. But I think from outside the club, from outside of Sunderland, a lot of people saw Grayson as a really sensible appointment. So were you personally quite surprised that he failed as badly as he did, or do you think he didn't have a pot to piss in, basically? He didn't stand much of a chance?
No, not really. I mean, I know a little bit about the financial problems that Sunderland have got and the budget and all that sort of stuff, which, to be frank, is probably still a bigger budget than what Preston have got. But yeah. But that's by the by. But yeah, probably a bit surprised that he didn't last a bit longer, didn't get some of the better results, particularly with the likes of Lewis Grabban, who I think is an excellent player, and I don't know exactly the reasons why he didn't stay around at Sunderland, but it just shows the sort of calibre of player he was able to get, and it is a bit weird, isn't it, why he wasn't able to sort of get the results to get the season off to a good start, and who knows what might have happened from there, but it hasn't happened, and yes, Simon Grayson's moved on, and Sunderland are struggling again, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think even I wasn't a huge fan of the Grayson appointment. I wasn't hugely against it, don't get me wrong. It underwhelmed me, to put it nicely. I think even I was surprised at how bad it went for him, though. But I think, I was very, very positive about the appointment of Coleman, and I still am. And although Coleman's had 4 to 5 wins more, it hasn't particularly gone fantastic either. I think, looking back and maybe in hindsight, I still think it was the right decision for him to be sacked. But I think at the same time, maybe if it was the other way around and Coleman had started the season, maybe because he spoke a little bit better, because Coleman's had a big job and been probably more successful on a grander scale than Grayson, would Coleman maybe have had more time if the season was switched around? I don't know, but I think, it's difficult, because you look at a manager like Coleman, where people were kind of surprised that he came to Sunderland in part. You look at Grayson, where people understood why he went. And realistically, they both kind of had, people will disagree with me on this, but we're in the same position. We still look as hopeless at the back as we always did. We'd look probably a little bit more toothless up front since Coleman's took over, but I think a lot of that is attested to the fact that he's lost Lewis Grabban, who was a bit of a Marmite player up here, but he came up the other week and scored against us, and I think he just showed that in this division he's one of the best marksmen around. But then I suppose that brings me on to Preston's Player of the Year last season, McGeady, another player who came with Grayson, he's got 5 goals for us, but I'll be honest, he doesn't really, he's not a guaranteed starter like we expected him to be. Are you surprised at how much McGeady sort of struggled and not really fitted in as well, or do you think that was to be expected when Grayson went?
When McGeady at Preston, he arrived with no expectation, no pressure, and no real limelight on him, and that, I think, for him was perfect, because he was just able to go out and play and basically do what he wants. He didn't have a great deal of defensive responsibility. He basically had the remit of get the ball and go and sort of make things happen. And he scored some worldies. He scored a few lucky goals. But broadly speaking, I think because he didn't have that pressure and expectancy on his shoulders at Preston, I think it helped him, and he flourished under it. I always thought when he would go to Sunderland, it would be a totally different ball game for him because of the expectancy and the crowd and just the nature of the club really being the way Sunderland is. I always thought it might be tough for him, to be honest. I didn't think he would not get in the team every week because with Preston he was pretty much the first name on the team sheet, and again I haven't seen him a great deal this season, so I don't really know what he's been up to or how he's been doing. But yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't had a bigger part to play really for Sunderland this season.
I mean, I'm only looking through this sort of statistically, but I remember when we got McGeady, and it was a case of, I think, something like, 9 goals, 11 or 12 assists, which is brilliant at sort of any level realistically. And I can totally understand why you say he was the first name on the team sheet. And I thought, he came in as Sunderland, and under Grayson, he was probably one of our best players, to be honest. He scored a couple of absolute worldies, but he sort of tailed off, doesn't really fit into the Coleman sort of role. But I was looking through sort of Preston's statistics beforehand, and I'm only basing this on statistics, but it looks like, I think it's Callum Robinson's really kind of took that mantle this season based on stats. He's got quite a few assists, quite a few goals there. Have Preston missed McGeady very much, or has Robinson kind of filled that gap?
This might sound strange as well, but I don't think Preston have missed McGeady. That's because Robinson is a player who has had an opportunity to play a little bit more, not just because of McGeady's departure, but most recently because Jordan Hugel's left for West Ham as well. So he's had a more forward role rather than on the wings, which is where he's traditionally played. There's another player called Tom Barkhuizen who is probably more influential to Preston than Robinson with goals and assists. I think he's the joint top scorer for Preston this season, and I'm fairly sure he's got more assists than Robinson as well, although I stand to be corrected on that. But he's the key creator, if you like, for Preston this season. But I think they're both in a very similar mould, both Barkhuizen and Robinson, in that they're young, quick, hungry players proving themselves at the championship level. They can score a few goals and they can create chances as well. So I think the McGeady void has been filled by probably 2 or 3 players who've stepped up to the plate for Preston this season, and that's probably helped soften the blow really of him not staying, because I know that Preston were very keen to obviously keep him at the end of last season, when Grayson was still at North End, but for whatever reason they couldn't get the deal done in time.
I suppose what's most frustrating for me, looking through Preston's team, and again, it's completely no disrespect to Preston, but I would like to think we could compete with where Preston are at the moment. The size of the club that we are, and obviously we're really not competing. And I think one big thing from Sunderland's perspective that we've banged on for seasons now, and especially this year, is the level of recruitment and the lack of thought behind it. And you look at like the signing of McGeady, I suppose, we were all guilty of saying McGeady would be a good buy, because you look at McGeady's assists, the way that he performed for Preston, but he's 31. I assume, and I don't know this in any way, shape, size or form, but I'd be surprised if he's on anything less than 20 grand a week. And then you look through Preston's team and the likes of the boys that you've picked up. I mean, I know Hugel's gone, but Hugel was next to nothing. You've got someone who's absolutely on fire at the minute in Sean Maguire. You've got, I can't pronounce the boy's name, I'm going to call him Tom. You've just said his name as well, but the guy from Morecambe. How is it Preston are able to pick up players that are of solid, high-level championship quality, yet Sunderland seem to, for want of a better word, spunk a load of cash on people who are has-beens, are no longer, at the peak performance they should be, or just don't have the right character to be at the club? From, again, I know you're an outside perspective, but what's your thoughts on how do teams like Preston manage to do that and Sunderland manage to fail so miserably, the amount of infrastructure we have in comparison to Preston?
Yeah, that is bizarre. I think the whole Preston squad is put together on less than £2 million, which is unbelievable, really, given some of the quality that's in there. And as you know, Jordan Hugel left in January for something like £8, £9, £10 million. I think it could potentially go up to. So in terms of the financial side of things for transfer fees, it's good. It's obviously good business sense. I think in the background there's a pretty good scouting network, and the Preston mould is one to try and find, as I mentioned earlier, those sort of young, almost unknown players who have, well, it looks like they've got good potential and good careers ahead of them, snap them up early and give them their chance. So there's 2 or 3 players you could name in that sense, from right through from the goalkeepers to Chris Maxwell and Declan Rudd. In defence, you've got Ben Davis, who is a youth player who's come through the ranks, same with Josh Earl. They came through the academy and have played a good handful of games in midfield. Ben Pearson, who came from Manchester United, wasn't playing there. A lot of these are Simon Grayson signings as well, incidentally. But Pearson was brought in, and he's probably the key player in that Preston team now, just because of his work rate and the sort of harrying and the jostling that he does in that midfield area. Then the Barkazens and the Robinsons, who we've talked about, who are again young, brought in for peanuts, next to nothing. I think Robinson was a free transfer, actually. And Sean Maguire, who's on fire at the moment, he didn't cost a great deal from Ireland. There's another lad in midfield, another Irish lad, Alan Bryan, who was brought in for about 20 grand. He's been a massive part. I think Preston haven't got the money, they haven't got the resources that a Sunderland have had in the past. So they've had to be clever and a bit smarter and not take a risk, but they've had to sort of look for those little gems in the League of Ireland or in the lower leagues of League One or League Two, and try and nurture the talent. So yeah, that's been the approach. And I know Sunderland have had a few problems with their recruitment in the past, and I think that's stemmed for probably 5 or 6 years, hasn't it? Probably even longer, over countless managers and seasons in the Premier League where money's been wasted. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the difference between the two, isn't it?
I think it's funny. I was speaking to sort of Brentford fans recently. I've spoken to a few different fans of different clubs, and the one thing I remember saying about Brentford was, I suppose, no matter which manager you have in charge and what your recruitment is the same. You have a certain style of play, very much similar to Swansea. You look at Swansea, no matter who comes in, they have that kind of style of play. Brentford have the same, whether it's Uwe Rosler or the current manager, Dean Smith. But when it comes to Sunderland, I said, the problem we've got is that we have different managers seemingly every 6 to 7 months sometimes. And it's a new idea, it's a new plan. You've got a load of players there that are sort of left over. But you made a really good point before about Grayson. A lot of those signings were Simon Grayson signings. And I think, and I'm talking a little bit from an outside perspective here, but I'd like to think that Grayson, in my mind, from what I remember, was very much a defensive manager. And I think he was the same at Preston, where Alex Neil's a lot more expressive. So it's weird, isn't it, how almost Sunderland get battered for changing their management, not really having a plan. Yet Preston have managed to sort of change their manager from one defensive minded to one kind of expansive manager with very similar players. And yet the players have managed to adapt, yet Sunderland seem to just not be able to do it at any point. One thing, just as we were chatting that, I was thinking, I wonder how much of it has got to do with patience of a fan base. I'm a Sunderland fan, and I think we're a great set of fans. I think one of the most patient out of the lot. But I think, admittedly, when you're coming into the club in, say, August time or pre-season or January, the one thing we don't have time for because of how long this has been going on, I suppose, is patience. And I suppose maybe accidentally we get onto players' backs a little bit too fast. Is Sunderland too big of a club in this league to have the patience to allow players from, say, the League of Ireland to blossom, whereas Preston is a little bit more, they're certainly not a small club. Preston are far from it. One of the league's founders, obviously, but I think there's probably a little bit less expectation than there is at somewhere like Sunderland, and certainly less frustration, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying about McGeady before, and I think a place that's slightly off the radar where people aren't necessarily looking at him every single week to pull up trees and deliver, outstanding performances is where he's probably at and going to be able to flourish. As we mentioned, Sunderland, totally different club, totally different expectations, and the struggles and the pressure and all that comes with it can quickly get on top of players. And again, looking from the outside, that seems to me to be the issue that Chris Coleman's got at the moment with Sunderland, because there's plainly some very good players on the books there, and on paper. It wasn't that long ago that Lamine Coney was 19 million pound on his way to Everton, and I saw him the other week on the telly on the highlights, and he looked like he wouldn't even get in a League Two side, let alone a Premier League team. So something's gone wrong, isn't it? But you don't lose that ability, I don't think. So there's got to be something wrong there, isn't there, in the club? You'll know better than me, but yeah, it's a strange one.
It's been a very prominent word throughout the Sunderland fan base for about the best part of 2 seasons now, and that's apathy. And I'm starting to wonder if, with players like, because Coney has actually been praised by Chris Coleman, and I know that the manager has to talk these players up, but I think Coleman doesn't talk any shit for want of a phrase. But I think when it comes to Coney, he said, that Coney had been posting videos when he was out injured, that he'd been going to watch the under-18s, the under-23s, really getting mucked in, involved, and Coleman really praised his attitude, and yet he came back and he's been absolutely woeful again. Like, the defence looks no better. And I think, rewind back 18 months ago, he was an absolutely brilliant partnership there with Kabul. And I think there's a big worry that he was good alongside Kabul, who could organise him. He could be like the brute strength, whereas Kabul was kind of the old experienced organiser, because he really hasn't performed since then. But, there's got to be some level of talent inside of that player, because you can be kind of talked through a game by another defender, but you're still got to be the person that's there and have the pace and the strength and the power. And he's not a young boy either. I think he's 28, 29, but it just doesn't seem at the moment to really be coming together in any way, shape, size, or form. We get one win and we immediately go and get tanked somewhere like Birmingham. It's a really, really difficult one to work out, and something I don't envy in any way, shape, size, or form, from even a fan's perspective, as if I was to manage it. I have no envy towards Chris Coleman whatsoever. But, moving on a little bit towards recent form from your side, I think we all know how bad Sunderland have been. I think we haven't won in 8, 9, something like that. It's been a while. We haven't looked like we've been in a game for 8 or 9 games. Looking at Preston's form, it's relatively decent. You've had a couple of games where you've had men sent off and men sent off against you. It's looking all right, but how's it been in reality? Because results don't always tell the full story, do they?
No, you're right. I think there's been an air of frustration actually about some of the results. I think looking at the results on paper, I think it's 3 defeats in the last 21 games, but I think it's something like 9 draws, 9 wins, something like that, and then the defeats. So there's the draws have been the frustration, because they've been games when Preston have been in front or been in positions to go and win games, see out and get 3 points, but for whatever reason they've equalised. They've dropped points late, sometimes late in the game, and it's been a frustration. So and I think particularly at home, it's been a bit of an issue playing at Deepdale, and there's been a couple of games where it's been expected that Preston would just roll the opposition over and get 3 points and go and get a bag full of goals, but it's been anything but, and it's been a bit more difficult. Having said that, away from home, it seems to be a bit easier, and I think Preston have won more points on the road than they have at home. So I think they would welcome the opportunity to be away again this weekend, having lost at the weekend. Looking at it, Sunderland look to be in all sorts of problems, so a good chance for the victory. But Preston do sometimes have this mentality of getting themselves up for the big games, and they played remarkably well against the likes of Wolves and Aston Villa, and then followed it up by struggling against one of the sort of lower teams, and that does tend to be the problem. So we'll wait and see how it pans out this weekend. But overall it's been good, and the return of Sean Maguire from injury has given the club a real boost. He's a Republic of Ireland international, but only recently, having won his first cap, I think in September, something like that. He'd scored a bag full of goals for Cork City before Preston snapped him up. He started the season really well, getting, I think, 4 goals in the opening couple of months of the season. Then he got a bad hamstring injury and was out for 4 months. And he's only returned in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I think he's got 4 or 5 goals in his first 4 games back. So the return of him is a timely boost, and could be a big one for Preston coming up to Saturday.
I think anyone would be fancying their chances against Sunderland, but. I think you would be. I think what's quite frustrating is there's one thing that I think Carl Henry spoke about it when just before Bolton played us. Funnily enough, the game where Grayson got sacked, and Carl Henry said, it's really easy to go to the Stadium of Light or words to that effect, because you just keep them quiet for 20 minutes to score an early goal, and the fans do the rest of the work for you. And I think Preston, based on what you were just telling me there, they've probably got to look at this game as ideal for them, because they can just keep hold of the ball, frustrate the fans. I know we shouldn't be, and I would loathe to think anyone thinks we don't get behind the club and the team, because we back them more than anyone, any other fan base. If they'd had to deal with the crap we've had to deal with for the past 6 years, would have turned their back a long time ago. And we still have 28,000 there at home, and people might laugh at that because the amount of empty seats, but it's still probably the biggest in the Championship. It could fill countless grounds in the Championship, but it is an apathetic, poisonous fan base. Like, there's no doubting that. And I think a team like Preston coming up to the stadium are like keeping hold of the ball for the first 20 minutes or just having a go at us and making us look as toothless as we are. Yeah, I think, it's probably an ideal game for Preston. But you did mention to me before about Preston occasionally, messing it up, so to speak. And I was at Deepdale earlier in the season. And I must be honest, I expected, Preston to batter us. I really did expect it. I thought Hugo was really impressive. But looking back to the game, it was a 10-minute spell where, Hugo scored an absolute cracker. I think Josh Harrop got the first one, but we were actually probably the better team at Deepdale. Why is it Preston sometimes do that? Is it just a case of a lot of young boys and consistencies or inconsistency is to be expected?
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit of it. I think that's been the main question that Preston have had for the majority of the season, trying to work out why one week they can, play fantastically well against the likes of Wolves and Villa, as I mentioned, and then other weeks they can struggle against Burton and Labour to a 1-0 win. But it'll be an interesting game on Saturday, particularly. I don't know if McGeady will play or if he'll start, but he certainly didn't make too many friends on his return to Deepdale, did he, that day when he scored, and with his reaction and his celebrations. But that'll get the Preston fans going, who always travel in good numbers as well, so there'll be a decent atmosphere from the away end at the Stadium of Light. But yeah, that consistency is probably what Alex Neil will be looking for between now and the end of the season, and who knows what division Preston will be in next season, but no doubt it'll be a key part of things going forward as well.
You mentioned the McGeady thing. I actually completely forgot about that, the whole McGeady reaction thing. And it was very weird because I went down to Preston and I went to I think it was essentially Weatherspoons, and I went over the road to this sort of sandwich shop. Now, I've been talking for the best part of half an hour, so the age-old joke of telling everyone you're vegan within a minute, but I'm actually vegan, and I managed to find this vegan health food shop in Preston, which didn't expect. And I went over the road, and it was funny. All your injured players, like Cunningham, I think it was, Clark, were sort of all in the shop. It was a really family orientated sort of. It was weird, like seeing players that are playing, high level championship football in just a shop near the stadium and across the road from all the fans in Weatherspoons. But I remember chatting to the owner where the players were in there, and he says, about McGeady, had a bit of a chat, and he says, Aiden used to come in here, so on and so forth. I'm expecting him to, be really up for it today. And I says, no, he did well for you and so on and so forth. I expect he'll get a good reception. And he said, well, no, not really. He probably won't. And I remember being really taken aback by the McGeady reaction. I obviously know that his reaction after he scored the goal, that he's probably going to get short shrift nowadays from any Preston fans. But was there something that Sunderland fans missed with that? Because from our perspective, it was just I think reading between the lines, Preston couldn't quite maybe afford the wages, because I was told Preston couldn't afford him, so he didn't have the option. But I'm sure there's more to it that maybe that I don't. What was the reaction all about?
No, you're right. I think it did come down to wages, and that was purely the heart of it. I think the frustration from the Preston fans' point of view came from everything he was saying while he was at the club sounded like he wanted to stay and that he was going to be a part of Preston going forward. So I think it was almost an assumption that it was going to be a done deal and that he'd take a hit on his wages to be able to play somewhere where he was sort of loved and doing well. Obviously, that didn't happen, and as soon as Simon Grayson left, I think it was always on the wall that he would follow him and go up to Sunderland. So yeah, I think money plays a big part of things in football, doesn't it? So I think that's probably a large part of it. Was it a bit harsh on him, the treatment he got from some of the Preston fans? Probably. But he had his own back, didn't he, with his celebration afterwards and the goal, of course. So. Yeah,
I think the reaction was because it was right in front of us basically when he celebrated, and he did his whole Adebayor thing and run about 100 miles back towards the Preston fans, and it was nice to see. It was nice to see he cared enough about wanting to prove people wrong. Nothing wrong with a bit of passion, but yeah, I was generally quite taken aback by the reaction of it because not dropping any names here, but as far as I'm aware, it was just a case of money. Someone could offer slightly more per week, hence why I think it took a little while to sort of come over the line. I think the biggest thing that surprised me was that there wasn't more ex-Preston players that came in with Grayson, because I think there was, I did an article right when he came in about players we could potentially not cherry pick, but players that he would maybe look to bring in. And I was thinking players like, Greg Cunningham, so on and so forth. The boy from Morecambe as well. I won't try and pronounce his name. You said it 4 or 5 times. I'm not going to try because I know I'm going to miss it. Is it Barkhusen?
I say Barkhazen. I think that's, yeah.
Barkhazen. That sounds easy to me. I can say that. So Barkhazen was another one I thought we might have looked at. And of course, one player we were really heavily linked to was Hugo. And I think had we stumped up 4 or 5 million at that time, we could have quite possibly stood a chance of getting him. Now, our whole season may look a little bit different. Of course, he went on to have a very good season and was picked up by David Moyes, our friend David Moyes down at West Ham. So I suppose, I've spoken a lot about how poor we are. And Crabbers tells me you've watched Sunderland once or twice this season, so maybe you've got more knowledge than our standard guest that we have. But is there anything about Sunderland that worry you on Saturday?
I think with Sunderland, it's a case of how well they play on the day. Like I say, you look at the team, and again, I have no idea who will start on Saturday, but again, a team to me that's got Aiden McGeady, Lanny Coney, John O'Shea, Billy Jones, who is well liked at the club. A team with those sorts of players in, to me, should be doing well. So I don't know if they've been having a lot of off days this season, but overall, I don't think Preston will be too worried. They'll be very, very confident, and they'll know that they have to win really to keep their playoff dream alive, particularly after losing last week.
It's funny you mentioned Billy Jones. I forgot that he played for Preston. Billy Jones, I'll hold my hands up and say, is my least favourite player that's ever played for Sunderland. I absolutely hate him. I've done.
What about his goal against Newcastle?
No, that doesn't even shadow his shitness. I just still hate him. It seems like every time he plays, there's just a goal that he's to blame for. I mean, I remember he came in, and I remember the first tweet that I read when we got him on a free transfer, and it was from Stephen Elliott, someone that I interviewed, a really good lad, really good bloke, and also ex-Preston, I believe, as well. Stephen Elliott.
Yeah.
And he said, Sunderland signing Billy Jones, good signing. He's not going to ever let anyone down. And as much as I like Stephen Elliott, he told a big, massive lie there, because he's the one that lets us down every bloody week. Billy Jones is, and Billy Jones has been shoehorned into centre half recently because of our injury crisis that we have at the backs, and obviously we play like that 5-4-3 centre half sort of formation that Coleman seems to be absolutely besotted with, and he's kind of shoehorned Billy Jones on the right hand side of that. And I mean, I'd love to articulate this better, but he's shit. He's completely finished. He's rubbish, and he has got that kind of sullen face that. And you mentioned Cattermole, and he's another one that's been horrific this season. And I've loved Lee Cattermole for a long time, but he's absolutely drove me crackers this season. Same with John O'Shea. And I think there's a big nucleus of players there that you've mentioned that are actually probably, I don't want to chuck blame on players, but they're players that have been with us for almost 5-6 seasons of struggle. And if there's one positive about going down to League One, I think it would be cleansing of those players. But we said that last season. We said we'd cleanse all the other players, and we're still in the same sort of hole that we're in. Me personally, I'd prefer to see a few more of the young boys come in, players who want to play for Sunderland. But I think it's been highlighted in certain aspects how badly some of the academy players are treated, and some of the boys like Beadland, Ledger, Andy Nelson, maybe not good enough for the Championship, but I certainly think they're deserving of a chance in League One if we go down, because they're doing quite well at the sort of Scottish Championship clubs. Obviously, Ledger's gone permanently, but I think that's the avenue we're going down. And I think, but you're totally right in what you're saying at the same time. If I was coming from an outside perspective and seeing names like Billy Jones, Lee Cattermole, John O'Shea, seasoned Premiership footballers, you would still be a little bit worried. But honestly, I think that's, from an inside perspective, it seems to be hugely part of the problem.
It took Preston 4 or 5 years before they were even in a position to be able to challenge to get back to the Championship, just because of the nature of League One. And there was a feeling about, we'll sort of cleanse the club, get rid of a load of dead wood, bring in young players. And it's a tough old place, and you've got some wily old pros in there who know what it's like week in, week out on a cold Tuesday night in Accrington, for example, which may well be the case for you next season if they go up and you go down. So it's a tough old place. They'll have their day, they'll have their opportunity in League One, but you also need those sorts of players who know where to stick the boot in and throw an elbow, keep you in a game. So it's I wouldn't take anything for granted about being able to sort of throw a team together fairly quickly and be able to sort of challenge for promotion.
Just got to have some kind of hope. Trust me, it's not said with any confidence.
Sorry.
I think, no, there's a lot of fans that would agree with you, and that a lot of Sunderland fans that say, we said this about the Championship will plummet down again. I think it's just my little semblance of hope that we have. So I suppose before I let you go, one thing I always like to sort of ask, prediction for Saturday. I think I know what it's going to be. It's going to be similar to mine, but for the sake of asking the question like I always do, how do you fancy the result going on Saturday if you had to pick a scoreline?
It's got to be an away win. I would say probably by 2 or 3 goals to Preston. If Sunderland got up front these days, I'm not totally sure. Is there anyone likely to score a goal?
Well, no, because it's Ashley Fletcher. You've got more chance of hitting Wearside than actually hitting any semblance of a shot on target. So yeah, very unlikely.
Right, so probably 2 or 3-0 then.
I think I'd agree with you. Now, I think you'll take it easy on us. I think you'll do what a few teams have done to us, like Brentford and Ipswich, go 2-0 up before half-time after frustrating us for the first 20 minutes, and then just take it easy in the second half. But if you want to have a go at us, yeah, you could quite easily make it 3. I'm going to go 2-0, though. I'm going to say you're going to take it easy on us. But yeah, I don't see anything but a defeat, unfortunately. But I hope they prove me wrong. But, it's the hope, as we always say up here, that is the thing we can't stand because it just lingers on, even though it feels like an absolute dead football club at the moment. But thanks very much for coming on, chap. It's been good chatting to you, actually. Depressing as it has been because you can see how bad we are. But Crabbers did recommend you, and I'm pleased to say you've lived up to expectations.
Good, no problem. That's fine.
Well, have a good rest of the week apart from Saturday. I always try to say that. I hope you have a horrible Saturday. Are you coming up for the match on Saturday? Or
Yes, I'll be there. Yeah, commentating on it as well.
Commentating on it, cool. We'll be nice to us. Be as nice as you can. But enjoy your trek up, and don't feel frightened to message someone for a pint because I'll get you one back later on.
Nice one.
Good man. Catch you later, Jonathan. Thanks, mate. So that's the end of the Preston edition. As always, we remain a little bit depressed, but I'm trying to be a bit more positive. Come on. I almost went for a draw there, but I don't like to be seen as a liar. It's just getting worse, isn't it? The Jason Steele goal on Saturday was just absolutely diabolical. I think for the best part of, 40 odd minutes, I don't know if it's just because I was drunk, but I just couldn't quite believe what he did. It kind of, the goal going in for QPR didn't faze me because that was to be expected. But what Jason Steele did, I mean, fuck me. It's the boy, even a professional footballer, but, I could do an extra half an hour here going through each player and asking the same blooming question. But, we've been in sticky situations, perhaps not in this division, but we've been in situations where we've looked dead and buried before. The Poyet season, Chelsea away, Man City away, Man United away, and we came out of that. So, you never know with Sunderland. It's 11 men against 11 men at the end of the day. You never know what results are going to pop up, and a couple of wins, and, we're going to games against Burton and Sheffield Wednesday at home, and it could turn around. I don't think so. I don't think anyone thinks that, but until it's mathematically impossible, I'm going to remain as hopeful as I can. But thanks very much for joining in. Get behind the lads on Saturday. Give it what you can. Keep that sense of humour that we all have, and keep sort of pushing whatever vitriol you have towards Ellis Short, but keep your support towards the team. Thanks very much. Catch you later.